Visits to the Blessed Sacrament by Saint Alphonsus Ligouri. Instructions on the visits. Our holy faith teaches us that we are bound to believe that in the consecrated host, Jesus Christ is really present under the species of bread. But we must also understand that He is thus present on our altars as on a throne of love and mercy to dispense graces and there to show us the love which He bears us by being pleased to dwell night and day hidden in the midst of us. It is well known that the Holy Church instituted the festival of Corpus Christi with a solemn octave, and that she celebrates it with the many usual processions and such frequent expositions of this most holy sacrament, that men may thereby be moved gratefully to acknowledge and honor this loving presence and dwelling of Jesus Christ in the sacrament of the altar by their devotions, thanksgivings, and tender affections of their souls. O God, how many insults and outrages has not this amiable Redeemer had, and does He not have daily, to endure in this sacrament on the part of those very men for whose love He remains upon their altars on earth? Oh, this He indeed complained to His dear servant, Sister Margaret Mary Alcock, Saint Margaret Mary, as the author of the book of the devotion of the heart of Jesus relates. The heart of Jesus. One day, as she was in prayer before the most holy sacrament, Jesus showed her His heart on a throne of flames, crowned with thorns and surmounted by a cross. And thus He addressed her, "Behold that heart which has loved men so much, and which has spared itself nothing, and has even gone so far as to consume itself, thereby to show them its love. But in return, the greater part of men show me only ingratitude, and this by irreverence, tepidity, sacrileges, and contempt which they offer me in this sacrament of love. And that which I feel the most acutely is that they are hearts consecrated to me." Jesus then expressed His wish that the first Friday after the octave of Corpus Christi should be dedicated as a particular festival in honor of His adorable heart, and that on that day all souls who loved Him should endeavor, by their homage and by the affections of their souls, to make amends for the insults which men have offered Him in this sacrament of the altar, and at the same time He promised abundant graces to all who should thus honor Him. We can thus understand what our Lord said of old by His prophet, that His delight is to be with the children of men, since He is unable to tear Himself from them even when they abandon and despise Him. This also shows us how agreeable to the heart of Jesus are all those souls who frequently visit Him and remain in His company in the churches in which He is under the sacramental species. He desired Saint Mary Magdalene of Pazzi to visit Him in the most blessed sacrament 33 times a day. This beloved spouse of Him faithfully obeyed Him, and in all her visits to the altar approached it as near as she possibly could, as we read in her life. Saints and the Blessed Sacrament. But let all those devout souls who go often to spend their time with the most blessed sacrament speak. Let them tell us the gifts, the inspirations which they have received, the flames of love which they have enkindled in their souls, the paradise which they enjoy in the presence of this hidden God. The servant of God and great Sicilian missionary, Father Luis Lanusa, was, even in his youth and as a layman, so enamored of Jesus Christ that he seemed unable to tear himself from the presence of his beloved Lord. Such were the joys which he there experienced, that his director commanded him, in virtue of obedience, not to remain there for more than an hour. The time having elapsed, he showed in obedience, says the author of his life, that in tearing himself from the bosom of Jesus Christ, he had to do himself such great violence as a child that has to detach itself from its mother's breast, in the very moment in which it is satiating itself with the utmost avidity. And when he had to do this, we are told that he remained standing with his eyes fixed on the altar, making repeated inclinations as if he knew not how to leave his Lord, whose presence is so sweet and gracious to him. Depart from me, Lord. To Saint Aloysius, it was also forbidden to remain in the presence of the most blessed sacrament. And as he used to pass before it, finding himself drawn, so to speak, by the sweet attractions of his Lord, and almost forced to remain there, he would tear himself away with the greatest effort, saying with an excess of tender love, "Depart from me, O Lord, depart." There it was also that Saint Francis Xavier found refreshment in the midst of his many labors in India, for he employed his days toiling for souls and his nights in the presence of the most blessed sacrament. Saint John Francis Regis did the same thing, and sometimes finding the church closed, he endeavored to satisfy his longings by remaining on his knees outside the door, exposed to the rain or cold, that at least at a distance he might attend upon the Comforter concealed under the sacramental species. Good King Wenceslas. Saint Francis of Assisi used to go to communicate all his labors and undertakings to Jesus in the most holy sacrament. But tender indeed was the devotion to the most blessed sacrament of Saint Wenceslas, Duke of Bohemia. This holy king was so enamored of Jesus Christ there present that he not only gathered wheat and grapes and made the hosts and wine with his own hands and then gave them up to be used in the holy sacrifice, but even during the winter he used to go at night to visit to the church in which the blessed sacrament was kept. These visits enkindled in his beautiful soul such flames of divine love that their ardor imparted himself even to his body and took from the snow on which he walked its wonted cold. For it is related that the servant who accompanied him in these nightly excursions, having to walk through the snow, suffered much from the cold. The holy king, on perceiving this, was moved to compassion and commanded him to follow him and only on the steps of his footmarks. He did so and never afterwards felt the cold. Your most profitable time spent. In the visits, you will read other examples of the tender affection with which souls inflamed with the love of God loved to dwell in the presence of the most blessed sacrament. But you will find that all the saints were enamored of this most sweet devotion, since indeed it is impossible to find on earth a more precious gem or a treasure more worthy of all our love than Jesus in the most holy sacrament. Certainly, among all devotions, after that of receiving the sacraments, that of adoring Jesus in the blessed sacrament holds the first place. It is the most pleasing to God and the most useful to ourselves. Do not then, O devout soul, refuse to begin this devotion, and forsaking the conversation of men, dwell each day from this time forward for at least a half or quarter of an hour in some church in the presence of Jesus Christ under the sacramental species. O taste and see that the Lord is sweet. Only try this devotion, and by experience you will see the great benefit you will derive from it. Be assured that the time you will thus spend with devotion before this most divine sacrament will be the most profitable to you in life and the source of your greatest consolation in death and in eternity. You must also be aware that in a quarter of an hour's prayer spent in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, you will perhaps gain more than in all other spiritual exercises of the day. It is true that in every place God graciously hears the petitions of those who pray to Him, having promised to do so. Ask and you shall receive. Yet the disciple tells us that Jesus dispenses His graces in greater abundance to those who visit Him in the most holy sacrament. St. Alphonsus' own testimony. Blessed Henry of Suso also used to say that Jesus Christ hears the prayer of the faithful more graciously in the sacrament of the altar than elsewhere. And where indeed did holy souls make their most beautiful resolutions but prostrate before the most holy sacrament? Who knows but that you also may one day, in the presence of the tabernacle, make the resolution to give yourself entirely to God. In this little book, I feel bound, at least out of gratitude to my Jesus in the most holy sacrament, to declare that through the means of this devotion of visiting the most blessed sacrament which I practiced, though with so much tepidity and in so imperfect a manner, I abandoned the world in which, unfortunately, I lived until I was 26 years of age. Fortunate indeed will you be if you can detach yourself from it at an earlier period and give yourself without reserve to that Lord who has given Himself without reserve to you. Taste and see. I repeat that indeed you will be blessed, not only in eternity, but even in this life. Believe me, all is folly, feasts, theatres, parties of pleasure, amusements. These are all the goods of this world, but goods which are filled with the bitterness of gall and with sharp thorns. Believe me, who have experienced this and now weep over it. Be also assured that Jesus Christ finds means to console a soul that remains with Him a recollected spirit before the most blessed sacrament, far beyond what the world can do with all its feasts and pastimes. Oh, how sweet a joy it is to remain with faith and tender devotion before an altar and to converse familiarly with Jesus Christ, who is there for the express purpose of listening to and graciously hearing those who pray to Him, to ask His pardon for the displeasure which we have caused Him, to represent our wants to Him as a friend does to a friend in whom he places all his confidence, to ask Him for His graces, for His love, and for His kingdom. But above all, oh, what a heaven it is to remain there, making acts of love towards that Lord who is on the very altar praying to the Eternal Father for us and is there burning with love for us. Indeed, that love it is which detains Him there, thus hidden and unknown, and when He is even despised by ungrateful souls. But why should we say more? Taste and see.